All right.
Hey, how's it going, Dana?
Thank you for joining in with us, and and thanks for being a part. I want to go ahead and say, whoa,
Too loud.
whoa.
Turn it down.
Yep.
Joe and
that was a
Linda,
thing.
hello.
I want to thank you guys for being a part of this whole class as we've been really. This is kind of a continuation of one of our COVID experiences, trying to do this over the course of over online, and man, it's been really fun. We've really enjoyed being with you guys in this particular way. So thanks for being a part of it, and thanks for joining in and just being faithful to that. So Dana and Joe and Linda, we're glad that you're here, and as others join in, we look forward to spending that time with them. I'm going to see if I can get it onto the right. I got to get it on the right page here so that I can.
It hasn't started on yours.
Well, I didn't push play there. There we go. There we go. So that would be it.
I see it.
All right. So today is our recap. It's the end. This is kind of the summary of what we've been doing. No, we definitely didn't write that.
Still debatable.
What do you think about that, though? Is that the Hebrews thing? I kind of shouldn't have. It probably wasn't worth going back
you know
to.
what? I don't know.
All right. Anyway,
I don't know about that.
So we have worked through at this point all of the genuine Pauline epistles. And I should say too, sometimes people get the wrong impression of what scholarship is on some of this stuff, and there are several of those epistles that we think of as that academics think of as being maybe questionable, like maybe Paul didn't write this or that, but everybody in the academic community agrees that like there was an Apostle Paul who did write, who did work, help start these Gentile churches, and who communicated with them. Like there's an epistle of Barnabas, for instance, but in terms of stuff that was attributed directly to that have doubts about some of. A lot of people that wonder if he really genuinely can be attributed as the writer of like 1st and 2nd Timothy or Titus, and there's lots of reasons why we can talk about it another time. But everybody agrees that there was this apostle, and that several of the early writings, for instance, nobody really doubts that he wrote Romans or Galatians or the Corinthian letters. Okay. Pretty much everybody agrees that he wrote those letters. Philippians, nobody's really contesting that. When we think about all these early letters, and I think all of them, all of the ones that we have in the New Testament are legitimately from the apostles, written from the apostle. When we look at them, we're getting this glimpse into the earliest part of Christianity that we can have. Okay, for instance, section of 1 Corinthians, and I should have pulled this up before I got going. If we look in, that this is my body, which is for you, remembrance of same cup, saying this cup is the new covenant in my body. Do this in remembrance of me. Okay, so that little bit right there is a story of Jesus, and Paul writing this, we think, in the early. Okay. That probably represents like the earliest story of Jesus. Things happen, like they educating. They kind of bring them up when they have different questions about what it meant to be Jesus' disciples in those days. But when all that to say, what we have in Paul's materials, we have this glimpse into the process of the early church, like figuring out what it meant to live as the people of Jesus, and I think Paul's fascinating from that, just from that perspective, just to kind of get into like what were the things that became problems for them, what were the things that were on their concern, and like what really, what was like pressing for them. You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily. I'm interested, just curiosity-wise, at some of like their day-to-day life and all that kind of stuff. But what really interests me is like the things that they kind of like really had to chew on and think on. And a lot of times, like they needed help from like one of the apostles to like help figure out like the implications of their faith. And Paul's doing that all the time. And I think it's it's a great way to feed our faith, to kind of get in tune with the sorts of things that they thought were important, you know?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times those are the same questions that we have.
Right.
But when they're not, it isn't like so annoying.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
like, but Paul, I
on
just
both
wanted you to
sides.
answer this one question. You're so
Yeah,
close.
like both in terms of like when he's answering questions that we don't really ask.
Yeah.
You know, and when he's not answering questions that we do ask.
Right,
You
yeah.
know, both of those end up being complicated.
Yeah.
And because we have to figure out the questions that we ask based on what was important to them.
Yeah.
You know, as much as we can, and sometimes it's complicated. That being said, my recap. Okay, what I have, Rylan, I have 4 different things that mattered to Paul. You know, that you can see in the prayers and the things that we've talked about his spirituality, like things that were like really, really important to him because they kind of kept coming up over and over. We look at whether we're talking about the prayers and whatever book, Ephesians or Colossians or Thessalonians or whatever, or whether he's talking about his own prayer life or his spirituality, what it means for him to relate to and follow the Lord. Like these are just all things that, to me, you could just kind of easily see that like they keep. Oh man, I didn't mean to do that. That they just keep coming up for Paul. Okay, so you are welcome to interrupt my little structured thing here with anything. I know you've thought about all this stuff too as we've studied. So
Yeah.
I
didn't. Well, I'm just gonna like listen to yours, and I don't want to like throw out just what I'm thinking because then I might steal your thunder.
Okay, all right. Well,
You go ahead with your.
You probably would. That's true. Okay, so the first thing I would say, looking at these prayers of Paul, okay, is that community matters. Like it deeply mattered to Paul, and over again, you have Paul saying, I pray about you guys every time I think about you, and Paul is traveling the world, and sometimes, 2 years, 6 months, maybe just a few days in some cases. Like Ephesus was one of the places we know he was like the longest period of time. Like he was there for like 3 years, But some places he just was like traveling through, and other places, he made himself at home and was really part of their community. And everywhere he went, though, you get a sense like he's collecting friendships. Ongoing sense in his prayer life that all those people that he's interacted with across the Mediterranean world, like they're important to him, and they're always like on his mind, and that sense of community like really mattered to Paul. I think you can really see that in all his prayers because he doesn't stop thinking about the church in these other cities, and he doesn't stop thinking, like he talks about in his letters, like. I'm praying because I think about you, like what he said in Colossians, the faith that you have and the love that you have for all the saints, or we'll talk about like the way that somebody's faith, or the way that it's like mattered, the way they've reached out for other people and things like that.
Yeah. The one thing that really stood out to me was the way that Paul prayed. It wasn't necessarily like, it was definitely who he was.
Yes.
But the way that he prayed, once we started breaking it down and really looking at it, it's just different. And one thing that I've learned is to try to like pray maybe in different ways because of like the way Paul was doing it. And
What's different in the way you say that?
Like the way that Paul prayed for other people's like faith.
Yeah, like their spiritual life.
Yeah, but not like, dear God, I pray that they have better faith. It was like, dear God, these people have great faith. And like lifting them up in a way that was like that didn't need anything necessarily. It wasn't like praying for them to overcome something. It was just praying.
Yeah, but those things too. I mean, just like praying in their faith, or and that's not just a phrase that just means I hope you have a good spiritual life. Like
right, yeah.
Like in the places where you're not trusting the Lord. Hope you'll have more trust in the Lord. Like that's what it means for Paul to like strengthen your faith, right? But what you don't see as much is the sorts of things that like make up so many of our prayer requests. Like people.
Every once in a while, like there was a couple of times when he was like, "Hey, this guy was really sick, and you guys prayed." Doing a lot.